Hi everyone. I was just checking to see if we were being recorded or not, and I guess that's a good warning. We are being recorded. So, what was the sheet that Davina McCall used to say about we're live on Please Do Not Swear? Anyway, so we're being recorded, folks. I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not you wish to swear. Anyway, I'm Sharon and I'm the Deputy Chair for BCS Women, and I am really, really excited about the content for today. I have heard about this a lot and I've not yet had a chance to hear from our speakers, although I have read some of the reports. So I think rather than going into a long intro, we will hand over them to Leslie and Jess very briefly. I just want to say to everybody, if you do have any questions, if you want to pop them into the questions box, then I will do my best to triage through those, and I'll pass them to Leslie and Jess as we get past the main part of the presentation. So yeah, pop your questions in there as they come to you, and we'll make sure we get to them towards the end. Obviously, the chat box is there if you want to interact with other people in the audience as well. So enough from me. We've got half an hour tight on time, so just let me head over straight to our speakers, Leslie and Jess, both from IBM, who are very, very familiar with this content, having led it and contributed to it. And over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. So, hello, my name is Leslie Nuttall, as Sharon said, and Jess Evans and I are here today to talk about an IBM initiative that's focused on determining how we can make technology resistant to being used as a weapon in abusive relationships. On that note, I just want to give a quick content warning. While there are no graphic descriptions of violence, we will be discussing aspects of domestic abuse that some people may find upsetting. As Sharon mentioned at the end of the presentation, we've set aside some time to allow for an open discussion, hopefully. Imagine being terrified of technology, being fearful to leave the home, afraid to connect with friends, and scared that if you do not follow every single rule, the all-seeing devices in your home will know, and so will your abuser. This isn't some fictional dystopian tale, but instead a daily reality for a multitude of domestic abuse victims. It's a sad fact that domestic abuse is a pervasive problem in society, and anyone of any gender, age, race, or religion can be a victim or a perpetrator. In recent months, COVID-19 has only made things worse, with the UN estimating a 20% increase in domestic abuse cases worldwide, and abusers are leveraging technology to facilitate this abuse. To help tackle the issue, IBM published 5 design principles that we hope will usher in a whole new generation of inherently safer technology. The idea for these principles came about after some colleagues were openly laughing and discussing about how they were remotely controlling the heating and Wi-Fi at home, unbeknownst to their partners who were at home at the time. Now, this was all said in a very jovial manner, as a practical joke, and it's very possible that their partners also found it funny. But it got us wondering if and how everyday technology could be used in a more sinister setting. So a team of IBM volunteers set up an initiative to investigate. After some initial research, it soon became clear that this kind of manipulation of technology is prevalent in domestic abuse, particularly coercive control, where relentless patterns of coercive and controlling behavior create such fear of another person that the victim will do anything the abuser requires. Now, there is help and guidance available to people facing technology-facilitated abuse, but the bulk of it focuses on keeping safe by educating yourself in the technology. In addition, advice could sometimes further isolate victims, and apps built to help could place them in increased danger if discovered by the perpetrator. We felt it was important to shift the onus of safety off the shoulders of end users and onto thoughtful design. So we developed a set of guidelines that enables technology to be built from the ground up to be resistant to abuse. So how is technology being used to abuse? Meet Tina, a stay-at-home mum with 2 children who was recently split up from her partner. This morning, when she came down for breakfast, her smart speakers started playing threatening, expletive-filled tirades. This has happened before and is starting to really upset Tina. Her ex-partner set them up, and Tina can't work out how to remove his control. She's probably going to have to throw the speakers away. After taking the children to school, Tina heads to a new cafe she found online. While waiting for her friend, Tina's ex-partner turns up unexpectedly and causes an awful scene. She has no idea how he found her, but he's been monitoring Tina's search history via her cloud accounts and tracking her location with the car app. The friend she was meant to meet never turns up. When Tina calls, her friend says that she received a message from Tina the night before on social media, cancelling the date. Tina's ex still has access to her account on his phone and deleted the message after sending it, so Tina couldn't see it in her history. To top it off, Tina then receives a notification from her banking app with details of a new incoming transaction. She discovers that her ex-partner has transferred a small amount to her account with a vile message in the transaction description. Tina goes home feeling depressed, isolated, and scared. How is her ex-partner still controlling her, even after she made him leave? Tina is a victim of technology-facilitated abuse, and she is not alone. An Australian survey of domestic violence support workers found an almost complete overlap between technology abuse and domestic abuse, with 98% saying they had clients who had experienced technology-facilitated abuse. The victims feel like they're under constant surveillance. They feel vulnerable, powerless, and they feel like nowhere is safe. At this point, you might be wondering, how big of a problem is this? Are we talking about a niche issue? Whilst there is no central reporting for technology-facilitated abuse, the number of cases appears to be on the rise. You may have seen the various news articles talking about survivors' experiences, many of which are quite disturbing. In fact, a recent news investigation looking into technology abuse found an 1,800% increase in alleged cyberstalking offences between 2014 and 18. In addition, cybersecurity company Kaspersky reported that stalkerware infections grew by 40% in 2019. Refuge, the UK's largest provider of shelters for domestic abuse victims, who also run the National Helpline, found that nearly 3/4 of the people seeking their help last year faced abuse via technology. In the past 2 years, the charity has also seen a rise in cases which involves abusers using IoT devices against their victims, such as smart locks, webcams, and smart heating systems. It's very possible that such cases are underreported because many victims are simply unaware of what is happening to them. Considering all this, I think we are safe to say that technology-facilitated abuse is a significant issue. It's been estimated that 1 in 5 people experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. For women, this rises to nearly 1 in 3. But what is deeply worrying is that a recent UN report exploring the impact of COVID-19 on women highlighted a trend of increased abuse as homes are placed under strain from self-isolation and lockdown. This has become so widespread that the UN chief is calling for measures to address this, and I quote, horrifying global surge in domestic violence. During the lockdown, charity Refuge reported that 66% more people were calling the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, and that there was a 950% increase in traffic to their website. The way that technology is used to enforce control during lockdown may have shifted focus. It's less likely that perpetrators were tracking location or calendars, but other techniques may have been utilized more and can be just as damaging. Some examples could be monitoring video chats or using smart home devices for manipulation. Victims may have no means of escape or have limited support during this time, so it's much easier for abusers to gain that control. Unfortunately, there is no easy answer to ending technology-facilitated abuse. However, we can help by balancing the intended with the unintended consequences of our tech. And the 5 design principles will guide technologists in this endeavor. The first principle is promoting diversity, having a diverse design team who consider all potential users of the technology, thus allowing greater exploration of both positive and negative use cases. Second is guaranteeing privacy and choice by enabling users to make active, informed decisions about their privacy settings with simple and clear configuration where the default settings are carefully considered. The third principle is combating gaslighting by having a digital record of who did what when, so as to disrupt attempts at psychological manipulation. Fourth is strengthening security and data so that users of technology have joint control with the technology only collecting and sharing necessary data. The final principle is making technology more intuitive so that users can navigate and understand it with ease, thus reducing the risk of abusers dominating with their greater technical confidence. To bring context to these principles, Jess will now explore some scenarios with you. While the examples themselves are fictional, they draw on our research to ensure that they are realistic.
Thanks, Leslie. Hope everyone can hear me. So let me introduce you to Stacey. Her mum, Mary, has escaped an abusive husband, Dave, to a refuge with Stacey and her younger brother, Toby. When Stacey's dad messages her asking for a photo of her homework, Stacey doesn't think anything of it and sends it to her dad. Stacey doesn't realise that the photo has location data embedded in it. Dave uses this to find the refuge and waits outside to threaten Mary. Terrified, Mary has to scramble to find somewhere new where she can safely stay with her children. The creators of the photo sharing app used personas to discover use cases, but the personas didn't include children. The team, therefore, didn't come to appreciate that children would not understand the terminology used in their privacy conditions. This led to Stacey sharing her location data unknowingly, which is then used by Dave with harmful consequences. Designers of technology can broaden their understanding of how tech might be used by looking at a range of user profiles, exploring both the happy and unhappy paths. As well as including children as potential users of the application, the developers could also have included an abusive persona to explore ways that their product might be manipulated for harm. When looking at usage scenarios, it's important to consider the impact of a situation happening, as well as the probability of it taking place. A rare stress case might be worth developing if it has devastating consequences. Alex here is setting his social media privacy settings. The choices on the screen are a big green button saying accept default settings and a small red button saying advanced settings. Alex chooses the default settings as it's easier and far less intimidating. Later that day, he accepts a friend request from a female acquaintance and, based on the default settings, this is unknowingly posted to his profile page. Alex's abusive wife sees this update and decides to punish him. In this example, Alex was guided to accept the default settings as custom privacy settings were less appealing. However, he didn't fully understand the consequences of his choice. If he'd known the default option would automatically post all his activities to his page, he may have made a different decision. The technology we use needs to be transparent and proactively inform us about what data is shared and recorded so that we can make decisions that are right and safe for our situation. In addition, the most appropriate privacy settings might differ across the user base. So rather than having just one set of default settings, it might be worth exploring different approaches for different personas. This is Rob. He's at home a lot while his partner Angus goes to work. Strange things have been happening over the last few weeks. Lights randomly turning off when he's trying to read, the stereo blasting out loud music when he's on phone calls, and the temperature alternating between stifling heat and frigid cold. This is a continuous pattern, and Rob feels like he's losing control of his home. Yet when he just tries to discuss it with his partner, Angus dismisses his worries, responding with, "You're overreacting," and "That's never happened to me, you must be imagining it." The reality is that Angus is controlling the home remotely, and with no clear indication on the devices as to what changes have been made, Rob is left in the dark. Gaslighting is where a person manipulates someone psychologically into doubting their memories and judgment. Technology can play a key part in this, especially when it can be controlled by more than one user or accessed remotely. If the devices in our homes had obvious alerts when they're remotely activated and had an audit trail of changes, this would make it difficult for abusers to obscure or distort the truth. This is Lynn. She was initially reluctant to share her email password with Roger, but he insisted, saying it was important to have trust when you're in a relationship. Now Roger is able to access many of Lynn's accounts that are linked to that email address. Lynn doesn't know her navigation app is saving history of everywhere she goes. This is linked to the email account, so Roger now has access to her location history too. The dynamic in personal relationships is different to the standard one user, one account scenario. Accounts and passwords are often shared, or devices in the homes have multiple users with only one admin account. With the increase in the use of federated accounts to log into multiple sites, abusers could have access to data from multiple sources with just one password. If Lynn's apps had encouraged her to enable two-factor authentication, Roger would have had an additional barrier. It would have been harder for him to access all of Lynn's accounts without her knowing, even though he had her password. However, even here we face challenges. Some devices have their notification settings default to show content on the lock screen. So if Lynn had not changed her default settings, a one-time password would have been shown on the lock screen of the phone, and Roger would be able to see it without the need to log in. One final area to mention here is data, and making sure you consider how it could be manipulated in the wrong hands. Take the example of device battery levels, which is often included when you share your location. It seems like a minor, innocuous piece of data, and you might wonder what harm there is in sharing it. But with that small piece of information in the hands of an abuser, their victim can no longer escape the relentless barrage of abusive messages by turning off their phone and saying that their battery had died, because the perpetrator would know that they'd lied, potentially leading to more harmful consequences. Olivia here is on maternity leave, spending a lot of time at home caring for her newborn son. Her controlling father has recently installed a connected doorbell. Olivia doesn't know how the doorbell works. She isn't sure if it's recording all the time, so she's nervous about leaving the house or having her friends come to stay without her father's permission. The doorbell requires an application to be installed on a device. It's complicated to set up and use, and if it's complicated to set up and use, or even if it's perceived to be so, it could be a barrier to Olivia controlling her environment. For those without a confident grasp of a given piece of technology, it's easy to fear its potential in the hands of someone else. Marketing the device to a range of users and conducting thorough usability testing will help avoid making users intimidated to use the device set up by other adults in the home. Making technology intuitive to use and understand is key. Even minor changes, such as wording, could make a difference, meaning a less confident user is more likely to access functionality that aids them. So to recap, the 5 design principles are promoting diversity, guaranteeing privacy and choice, combating gaslighting, strengthening security and data, and making technology more intuitive. We would encourage you to consider all of these things when building your applications. Some may be more related to user interfaces, while others are focused on the server side. But in reality, any technology that interacts with humans, uses their data, or influences decisions about and for them could potentially be manipulated by bad actors. So open up conversations and start asking the questions as to whether your technology could be used for harm. You know your products, platforms, and services best, but by having these discussions and stopping to think about this type of abuse, we might get closer to making technology safer for us all.
Thanks, Jess.
Back to you, Leslie. Thanks.
So, domestic abuse is a scourge on our families and communities, with technology enabling this hidden crime. While a control that abusers exert isn't new, the tools that they use are. We firmly believe that few in the technical community intentionally create technology to cause harm, but it is possible that there is a disconnect from the unintended effects of those creations. That is why we ask anyone developing technology to adopt these principles so as to ensure that our products improve the lives of society's most vulnerable people. Compassion should be our foundation, always. And in today's world, this is more important than ever. Finally, if anyone is affected by what you've heard today, there is support available to you. These include police response, online support, helplines, refuges, and other services. We've included some organisations here who can help. Jess and I would now welcome any questions.
Hi folks, just popping back in. Now, it looks like you've had a really easy time of it because there's not a single question from anybody. So while others kind of get their thinking caps on, I had a question, of course, I get control, so I'm allowed to. What sort of take-up have you seen of these 5 principles across the tech industry? Because I know that you published this information through the BCS magazine, didn't you? Or earlier in the year, this year? Was it last year? I've lost track of time completely.
So yes, I think, well, initially we had a workshop with various people in the industry, interested parties such as charities and academics. And yes, then there was an article published by the BCS after that. We eventually published our principles paper as well as an article with the IBM Policy Lab. So that's out there now. And it's had generated quite a lot of interest by various publications. There's been quite a few articles written. We've done a couple of conferences, a Tech Week panel. And there might even be something out this weekend on BBC, but we'll see. So yes. But the next step is to evolve the principles basically by working with partners and clients to implement them, for real. We wanted to make sure that our research and findings and the principles were out in the wild. So that was why we published them with the Policy Lab. But yeah, there's definitely more to do.
Yeah, I was just thinking, coincidentally, I was having a conversation with somebody from our mobile team 2 days ago, and obviously, so I say our, just for those of you who don't know, I actually happen to work for IBM as well. Yeah, and given the amount of work that we did with Apple, for example, around about apps, and I know they were very much sort of business context applications rather than the home consumer type scenario, or not necessarily home but consumer type. You know, there's maybe even something there that we could be thinking about now more proactively than perhaps we would have done before. So I might ping an email across to Tony and just see what they're doing there on that one. Right, we do have a question. We do have a thank you as well. So thank you for Rebecca. I find this a very interesting session. So Paula has asked, do you think the principles need to be set into legislation to ensure take-up?
That's a very good question. We have started work to get them put into standards. When you start discussing regulations, you possibly want them to be quite precision focused, laser focused. Otherwise, if they're quite loose, then it can possibly even prevent innovation, and we don't want to have that. If anything, we would like these principles to foster innovation, because as you're thinking about how to make your technology resistant to that kind of abuse, you might come up with some amazing new ideas that make technology better for everyone. And we've seen in the past that technology that is more inclusive is better for everyone. I think the example I always think about is video subtitles. So they were originally created for the hard of hearing, people with hearing impairments, but now they're amazing for if you're in a really quiet environment or a really noisy environment, or even for translating, audio into another language. So it shows that if we can be more inclusive, think about the more vulnerable people in society, we'll probably foster innovation and make it better for all of us. So.
Yeah, that's what I made a comment a bit like that. I was blogging on something not so long ago about to do with ethics, largely in what we're doing from an AI and a data perspective, and what can you do. And the person who was speaking at this event said something that I really believe in, and that's actually ethics. If you build ethics into it, you can be even more innovative. It doesn't necessarily hold you back. Yeah. So we have another question. Do you have an IBM link or account we can follow to find out updates on any innovation in this area? So there was the link on the 5 principles that I popped into the chat. Is there anything further there that we could maybe send, or is that included with everything?
No, we have yes, we just have the Policy Lab article and paper. Now that is actually a good idea. I'll make a note of that. Maybe we should have something. Yeah.
Brilliant, Caroline. Thank you very much. She says thank you. So great. I'm noticing that it is 1:02. So unless somebody is really quick with another question, I am just going to thank everybody very much. Thank you to the attendees for coming, because without you, we would be talking to yourselves. Or I guess I would still be listening, so I would be very happy. No, it's great to have them. And of course, Leslie and Jess, a huge thanks to you for your time on this. This is a really time-consuming piece of work that you have done. I just want to acknowledge it. This is not your day job. This is something you've done because you feel very passionately about it, and obviously creating momentum around it takes a lot of your personal time. So just a huge thanks to both of you for trying to make a difference, and actually making a difference, not just trying to. We will record this, or we have recorded this, so we will make the link available to folks who maybe couldn't make it today, but would still be interested in the content. And BCS Women's here to support women in tech, girls who want to move into tech, and so on and so forth. If you've got any ideas for further content or anything, please feel free just to get in touch. Let us know what we can do for you as a community. And with that, it's hit 1 o'clock. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great rest of Thursday, Friday, and enjoy the weekend when it finally comes to. Bye.
Thank you.